Hey, tell us about your church.
So we call it the Wild Branch, just in reference to the scripture being the grafted vine of Israel. My goal is to build the Wild Branch ministry as the grafted into the root of the Commonwealth of Israel. The results, in my opinion, will be and I think is already beginning, a true revival, as all the people know and live the biblically process of understanding the Old Testament combined with the New Testament.
It's interesting how helpful this has been from so many sectors. I'm a big fan of N.T. Wright. It certainly makes the Old Testament interesting. And of course, I love talking to you because you're so excited and you have so much information about some of this Old Testament stuff. I remember us talking about the grafted tree. I think we must have been in Romans. I'm assuming we were talking about the section of Romans 9 through 11.
Right.
And so much background about grafting and stuff like that.
We have so many meanings of names that we just kind of forget or overlook sometimes. But Micah means who is like God, who is like our God. And I love the prophetic books, because to me, I have sort of a mental picture of a guy standing on the shore of a very calm, placid lake. He's got a big, smooth, flat stone, and he's skipping that rock across the water. And first it hits the water, boom, it comes up and then down and then down and then over and over and over and over and over till it goes under. And to me, that's kind of my view of some of the, particularly the prophets in scripture is they hit hard on that first thing. And then it's like the prophecy continues to fulfill itself throughout time, over and over and over and over and over till the very end. And so the first rock focuses in one section of the prophecy, and then he throws another rock a whole different direction, same kind of idea, but in a whole different direction. It just kind of keeps skipping till the final prophecy is fulfilled in the first coming of Messiah, and then of course the second coming of Messiah. Because we look at things from a very Greek Western worldview, where everything's linear, you have a beginning and an end and little segments between. But really, in Eastern Hebraic worldview, it's more like a cone shape. It just gets stronger and stronger. The cycles repeat themselves.
Yes.
And get bigger and more pronounced as the end comes, or the final fulfillment of the prophecy. And it sometimes includes the scope of the whole known world, and then shrinks all the way back down to Israel and then Jerusalem.
He starts like most of these guys do with a message of judgment, because people need to hear from God. And it's amazing. Just as God's getting ready to let the 10 northern tribes fall, he's speaking like crazy through a bunch of guys. And so it's like, I'm talking, you're going to need to know that I was talking to you, because you're going to be freaking out. And so I'll start in chapter 1, verse 2, which is just a very general, it says, "Hear you peoples, all of you, listen, earth, and all who live in it, that the sovereign Lord may bear witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple."
Right.
It's kind of like you guys have your temple, and then if you're talking about the northern kingdoms, you have your temples. Now we're hearing from the guy who has the actual temple, that your temples are little mirrors of, which is so typical in these prophets. They say, here's the judgment, but then they intersperse it with messages of hope that are huge, overwhelming. And how that's a loving father. I have to punish you, but I love you, and I'm doing this because I believe in you, and I want you to become who I know you're going to become, particularly because I am chastising you. And why don't we focus on the first, this as far as I can tell, the first message of hope, which has to do with sheep. I'm going to hit 2:12.
Someday, O Israel, 13. I will gather you. I will gather the remnant who are left. I will bring you together again like sheep in a pen, like a flock in its pasture. Yes, your land will again be filled with noisy crowds. Your leaders will break out and lead you out of exile and out through the gates of the enemy's cities. Back to your own land, your king will lead you. The Lord himself will guide you. It says in 13, your leader will break out and lead you out of exile.
Okay.
The leader is one of the sheep.
Got it.
Which relates back to a scripture that's always bothered me. One of my favorite guys is Rabbi Joseph Schulman, is the leader of the first Messianic congregation in Jerusalem since the diaspora. Matthew 11:12. So it's in context. Jesus is talking in this section. He says, from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been subjected to violence, and violent people have been raiding it. I was like, I don't understand what that means, Lord. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so it was maybe a year or two ago, I was listening to Joseph teach on this particular passage of scripture. And he says, what many Christians don't understand, he was quoting from the book of Micah. I was like, what? So he's quoting from this exact chapter and verse, chapter 2, 13, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to switch versions again here. So the one who breaks open the way will go up before them. So we see in verse 12, I'll gather Jacob, I'll bring them together like sheep in a pen. So what he described is especially in the springtime, a shepherd takes the sheep and they put them up against like a rock outcropping or a cliff, and they build a rock wall to protect the sheep. And that's sort of an outdoor pen. And then what happens in the morning, one of the sheep, because they're starving, they're hungry, they woke up, they're looking around, they want some water. One of the sheep begins to push the rocks down in front of them and kick them down. Eventually, that sheep is the breach breaker. He kicks the wall down and he lets all the other sheep out of the pen so they can go out and go out and enjoy the pasture and the clean water. And that word, the breach breaker, that word in Hebrew is poretz, and it means to break forth. That word in other passages of scripture, it talks about when a baby is being born, it's a breach breaker. It's breaking out. You can't stop it. And then new life comes out of that. And this rabbi says what Yeshua was saying was that this is this very same thing. And of course, that's a messianic prophecy, that the sheep, which Yeshua, Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, he broke down the wall of separation so that we could come out of the fold and enjoy the good pastures before us. They're pouring out like they're getting out of hell. Let's get that.